Hi, good morning. I think everyone is here now. Tell me how many of you are taking the class from work or en route to work? No one? That's interesting. For those, for whom office starts at 8:30 or 9, many people they go to office at 7 to take the class. That's actually quite effective. Today we are going to start with reading comprehension. And I'm going to put a few passages on the chat box here so that you can access them and download them. I think we've not yet put them up on the portal. We'll do that today. So this week we are going to concentrate on reading comprehension. All the related material will get uploaded today. I've put 4 passages on the chat box. Can you please open them? Make sure the files are working for you. Isha, you can't view any of them or any particular one?
I can't view anything. I just read this content can't be viewed here.
Okay, wait, I'm putting it on the WhatsApp group also.
Thank you.
Others, I hope you are able to access. Okay, I think all of you are able to download the files. Let's get started. Anurag, I have put it on the WhatsApp group also. I'll anyway put it here again.
Sorry, I just refreshed my system actually. So, in the new system, it's not showing me Shweta ma'am. So,
Yeah, sure. I'm putting it here again.
yeah, thank you.
How many of you are in Bangalore? Who all are in Bangalore? Aditi is in Bangalore. Anurag. Leonard. Okay, who all are in Mumbai? Isha and Ojas are in Mumbai. Where is everybody else? Are you all in NCR? Anurag is in Chennai. Yeah. Okay. So we have been having a chat with Mudit on wanting to meet everyone before round one and round two. We are likely to be in Mumbai 4th and 5th July, 11th and 12th July, we're thinking Bangalore, and 18th, 19th, we'll probably do Gurgaon. So Mudit and I will try to meet everyone in the community. Once we finalize the dates today or tomorrow, we'll put it up. So please save the date and try to be there. It's good to get your profile evaluated and have a conversation around which round you're going for and what schools and what scores are you targeting. I hope everyone got a chance to view the orientation session. If not, please view it as soon as you can and start working on vocabulary. I want to give you another week to work on vocab before we begin vocab-based questions. That's why I'm going to spend this week talking about reading comprehension. Some points to note about reading comprehension. From a weightage perspective, it can never be less than 50%. Usually averages around 60-65% of the verbal section. So from a sheer weightage perspective, yes, it's very important. It's slightly more important than vocab. Whatever we do on reading comprehension or for critical reasoning for that matter is indirectly going to help me on vocab based questions. The good thing about the verbal section on the GRE is that nothing is like an isolated bucket. There's no silos. Whatever I'm doing for RC is working for CR. What I'm doing for RC CR is in a way working on the vocab questions and vice versa. Because the beauty of the whole thing is that the indicators that we use, these indicators, they remain the same no matter what the type of question. So GRE has this advantage that you are using the same indicators across the verbal section, but in different ways, which is good for us. RC will be split across short, medium, and long passages. When we call something a short passage, we're saying that it's really short. It's just a few lines. It's one paragraph and one short paragraph. A medium length passage can be one long para or two short paras. Whereas long passages can have 3 to 4 paragraphs. In terms of lines, this could be 5 to 6 lines. This is 10 to 15. And this could be 40 or more, 30 to 40. It's unusual to see a 50-60 line passage. On today's GRE, that is unusual. The length of the passage has no correlation with the level of difficulty. Please do not associate level of difficulty with the length. I can give you a short passage which is fairly tough. I don't need to make a passage long to make it tough. And I can give you a long passage which is not so tough. So don't correlate length with difficulty. The subject matter of the passage has no correlation, again, with the level of difficulty. These are not related. While some of us may feel that, oh, I'm reading a passage which the subject I'm not familiar with, it feels very alien, I'm not able to understand, I'm zoning out. But the subject matter has no correlation with the level of difficulty. The number of questions, yes, has a correlation with the length of the passage. So a short passage can carry 2 to 3 questions, usually just 2. And a medium length passage, 2 to 3 questions. Long passages are usually around 4 questions. 5 questions possible, but not usual. You already know that the first section is going to have a total of 12 questions. Usually out of those 12 questions, 7 are RC, 5 are vocab based. That's the usual split. So the first section usually 5 questions belong to text completion, sentence equivalence, and the remaining 7 questions will be RC. And on the second section, out of 15 questions, usually the weightage for text completion and sentence equivalence will be 7 and 8 for RC. Reading comprehension is not a test of memory. So we do not try to spend 4-5 minutes reading a passage, memorizing whatever it has, and then answering questions. That's not what we do. So while I've said that it's not a test of subject matter, it's not a test of memory, I know many of us are still going to be a little uncomfortable if the subject matter is totally alien, or you'd still be curious as to what is the subject matter that I'm getting tested on. So let me get that discussion out of the way. You will see social sciences, such as history, political science, economics, sociology, anthropology, psychology. These get talked about. Then, of course, there is arts. Within arts, it can be literature, or it can be Arts in the sense of music and dance. It can be painting, sculpture. I don't know where to put architecture among social sciences or natural sciences, but architecture is also a common theme. Because usually they're going to combine architecture and sculpture kind of themes. But anyway, for the sake of listing it, I'll put it under natural sciences. We have architecture, physics, astrophysics is very common. Biology and related subjects like we get zoology, botany. Then they're very interested in genetics. So you'll get biochem, you'll get biotechnology, but I've not yet seen a pure chemistry passage. I've seen biochem, I've not seen something for the sake of chemistry alone. You see geology. So this is the length and breadth of the subject matter. Now that we've talked about it, we should forget about it because it's not getting tested as subject matter. You don't need to know all these subjects to handle RC. Very interesting fact that you'll see around social sciences and arts that there will be a common theme across gender, race, and ethnicity. Just think about it. If these passages were for an Indian exam and they have to talk about Indian society, they'd also pick up similar themes, maybe the gender discourse in India, or they'd talk about class and caste in India, how religion sometimes affects the social discourse in India. So, but because these are coming from an American context, they will reflect the social reality of America, where you have race related discussions. Because it's a melting pot of so many cultures from all over the world, ethnicity becomes important. Their gender related discussions are different in flavor from a gender related discussion that would happen in the Indian context. The gender war, so to say, or the search for equality is very different in the cultural context of the two countries. In India, in 1947, when we got independence, on paper, with the constitution that came up by 1951, everyone was equally a citizen, irrespective of gender and class. Whereas in the Western societies, equality on paper, which let me say can be equated with the right to vote, that has come in stages. In the UK, for instance, earlier it was only the landed, the noblemen who could vote, who could participate in the parliament. Then it became extended to all men before it got extended to women. So even something like the right to vote is something that the women have fought for. Lot of you will go to the Wharton school, or you'd have friends going to Wharton this year. Till very recently, Wharton was not a co-ed school. Wharton was only for men. So right to education, right to higher education is something that step by step women have fought for. In India, the problem has been more about execution. It exists on paper, and we are fighting for execution in reality. So that's the interesting difference. But you're going to get to see these debates from an American perspective. And it will not be that I'm doing history for the sake of history. You can have race as an element, history as an element, and political empowerment as an element in the same passage. How one particular race over history, through history, over time, gained political power. Okay. Or how did one ethnic group start off? I'm looking at the history of that and their economic growth. So themes will always be combined. It's never going to be that these are independent buckets and they can't interchange. They're very much going to have reciprocity. But you don't have to worry about all of this. I just wanted to get it out of the way. So if this is not what we are going to focus on, then what are we going to do as far as reading comprehension is concerned? We are going to view reading comprehension as the story of structure. How is a passage structured? That is what we are going to obsess over. When we talk about structure, we are referring to the blueprint of the passage. Milestones that define the passage. And as we learn to appreciate the structure of the passage, we will also understand what are the different types of passages that we'll deal with. And when I say types of passages, I'm not talking about content. I'm talking about structure. We'll talk about types of passages. And obviously, the most important job, what are we doing all this for, is to answer questions. So we're going to deal with how this reflects on the types of questions and how do we go about solving them. Because we are going to be so obsessed with the structure of the passage, we will look at structural key indicators that help us define what is the blueprint of this passage. While you are learning vocab for this section, there will be some words which are specific to RC and how they get tested. These are the few aspects that will define RC for us. So before I flesh this out, please open passage 1. On passage 1, what I'd like you to do is read the first half of the first paragraph carefully, this much, then skim through. I'm not saying ignore, but skim. Skim through para 2. When you come to para 3, read the first half more carefully and then skim through the rest of it. After you've done that, attempt the first question, the primary purpose question. So I'm asking you to read the first half of the first para, first half of the last para, and skim through the rest of the passage. I hope everyone has had a look. Did you try the question? Put your answers in the chat box. Okay, let's see your answers. Most of you have gone with C. Anurag D, Akshay D, and Neha's gone with D. Any other answers, anyone? No? Okay. Let's take a look at this passage. I had asked you to read the first half, right? Let's start with Ayush. Ayush, when you read the first half of this para, this much, what was your takeaway? What kind of passage are you looking at?
From the first passage, it is somewhat the ancient culture of Japan, or how um, the history about the history of Japanese culture.
Okay, let me ask Ojas. Ojas, when you read the first half of the first para, or when you skimmed through this whole para, what was your takeaway? What is the type?
Ma'am, it was just letting us know about the all the information that is present. It is not defending, it is not criticizing, it is not arguing. It is just summarizing as a whole how
Okay.
the system
So
works.
can we say that the first paragraph was factual in character?
Yeah.
Ayush, you agree with that? That they're presenting facts?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Aditi, when you looked at the second para, what did you feel about it?
It was talking about in detail of what the community actually did. That was mentioned in the first paragraph.
So it's building on the first para. Is it going
Uh-huh.
away from the factual theme of the first para or continues to be factual?
Um, Not so factual, I'd say.
What is the non-factual element here?
Um, there's an element of opinion when, they talk about how economic progress was um, mm, not my bad. It is factual indeed.
Okay. Akshay, what do you think? Is the second para factual or not factual?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's still factual, builds on that first paragraph.
So if this passage had finished off with the first and second para, then under types of passages, we would have classified this as a factual passage. So I've said this before in our first session on 14th, and I'm saying it again. I maintain these as class notes. I use the Google Doc instead of a whiteboard so that everyone has standardized class notes. So the generic stuff I am writing here, you don't need to copy that out. But things which are specific. So when we start discussing each option here, option wise, if there's specific stuff that we are talking about here, which I'm highlighting here, that you should definitely note down because I may not always be able to note down question specific stuff. Okay. So one kind of passage can be a factual passage. Why would I write a factual passage? This corresponds with, so when I call a passage a factual passage, this is corresponding with how the passage has been written. But why would I write a factual passage? Somebody said summarize. So we want to summarize what's happening. We want to explain something, describe something, define something. These are the reasons we would write a factual passage. Now let's look at the last para. Shantanu, the last paragraph, is that factual?
It's critical about the methodology followed for the uh, so it's non-factual. It's a opinion.
Okay, you feel there is an opinion.
Yes.
Sanjay, what about you?
The first half is factual, and then from they talk about the limitations of the study and what the author has missed. So I would say it is a half factual and half opinion, and half part which is an opinion from the author.
Okay, Anurag, what do you think?
I'll agree. There is a overall observation of the limitation in the methodology that has happened. But yeah, it's kind of a critique, but also considering like there's, I mean, I can't not say that this is not factual because it is based on the study. So maybe less of factual, more of observation.
See, when you look at the very first sentence, it says valuable. And that's followed up with however. And then this limitation, this refers to however. Pronouns are important structural keywords, okay? Over here also we had seen that pronouns are important structural keywords. That, which, this. Pronouns are very important for us as structural keywords, even on reading comprehension. The nature of those pronouns can be different. Which ones get tested, that can be different. The most commonly tested pronouns are this, these, those. But this is the most commonly tested. The way it's done over here, this limitation, it tells you it's connected to the previous sentence. But often what they do is they use this in this particular sentence to connect it to the previous para. If you had a this over here, then it would be connected to this part. Okay, anyway. This is valuable, which is positive in connotation, followed by, however, limitation. And then there's an elaboration on those limitations. So it follows a pros and cons structure. There is positive and there is negative. So our second kind of passage that we are interested in, one of the most common types of passages is the pros and cons passage. So how has the passage been written? First positive and then negative, usually. You can also have negative first and then positive, but usually we see a positive followed by negative structure. It is also not necessary that there is a 50-50 division. I'll spend one para with positive, one para with negative, not necessary. Like over here, there was one sentence on positive and the rest of it is negative. It's still pros and cons. Proportion doesn't matter. Why would you do such a thing? Some of you used the language. You said there's a critique happening. Critique is not the same as criticize. Critique is looking at the pros and cons. Don't confuse the two. A movie expert, a film critic, does what? Provide a critique on the movie, tells you what's good, what's bad. So, who can give you a critique? An expert. Analysis, evaluation, assessment. What does the film critic do? Either give you a critique or in more informal language, we'll call it a review. So these are the common words associated with pros and cons. From a structure point of view, if I had to write down the structure of passage 1, you will make written structures for the first 30 to 50 passages that you practice so that your focus is strictly on the structure of the passage. I can label the first para as factual. I can label para 2 as factual. And para 3, I can identify as pros and cons. This is the bare structure of the first passage. You can, of course, flesh this out depending on how much time and bandwidth you have. You might want to write that this is Kazuo Nakane's History of the Early Japanese, and you're talking of California's Pajaro Valley. You might want to write all this down, but it's not going to serve you anything. We do not write down facts on structures. We try to record structural development in a written structure. Okay? And we are not trying to memorize the passage. So, having identified how this passage is structured, I will now look at the primary purpose question. The structure of the passage, it should help me appreciate the primary purpose. When we said that reading comprehension is the story of structure, what does that imply? What are the most important questions that I should ask myself when I'm thinking of RC? Let's see. Neha, do you follow any detective series?
No, Shweta.
Okay, any detective story that you saw in the last 10 years?
Mm, can't recall actually.
Namir, what about you?
Um, yeah, I think from the top of my mind, Sherlock.
Okay, so be it a Sherlock or an Agatha Christie, or if, and you can't be Indian and have escaped seeing some episode of CID in your life. But imagine a situation that you have any of these detectives and a scenario where a murder has happened. Let's say you are at a farmhouse party, 30 people, one person dead. So let's say the Great Indian CID was called as per the series, what would they do? They would send the body to forensics and stuff. But even before, because it's the Great Indian CID, even before the reports are there, they'd normally have solved the mystery by the end of the episode. So, what are the most important questions that they must ask themselves as they investigate? Arjun, what questions would they begin with?
Uh, I guess they would want to know more about the population sample.
There are 30 people, one is dead. What questions would they want to answer in order to solve this murder mystery?
Maybe at what time did the murder happen?
What time did it happen? Okay, Anurag?
Yeah, place kind of like what we say. Yeah, it's the place actually initially, and we call it as saksham in the local language. Proof. Is anyone seen it?
Okay. Dhrubarup, what would they do?
How the murder has happened, they'll try to understand that.
So all of it that Anurag and Arjun was saying, doesn't it contribute to the how? Like what time, where, what was the modus operandi? Was somebody strangled, poisoned, gunshot, stabbed? What? All of this is actually how the murder happened. Let's assume that the person was poisoned. And then they're going to work backwards and say, okay, who all had access at that time to his food or drink? And out of 30, they identify 3 people who had access, who could have actually done this. Now, from those 3, if they have to identify who's the murderer, what do they have to do then? Isha, what next question should they have to explore or find answers to?
What is the motive?
Very good. Why? How does this correspond with RC? How is the structure? Why is the primary purpose? Which is why we're spending so much time and energy on this. Once you know the how and the why, now like the CID, you can do a press conference and say, hey, ask me any question you want. Now I can answer all questions. So once you've figured these 2 out, you're equipped to answer other questions. So in the first 2 minutes of my passage time, I am sorting these 2 out mentally. Even if I'm not writing anything, even if the first question is not primary purpose, even if primary purpose as a question doesn't exist for that passage. In my first 2 minutes of RC time, these 2 have to be sorted out. So let me talk about timing on RC. Spend anything from 1 to 2 minutes on reading the passage and identifying its structure. The shorter the passage, the less the time. Very short passages you might be able to read in 30-40 seconds also. But please don't spend more than 2 minutes simply reading the passage because we are not reading for content. I'm reiterating, we're reading for structure. Subsequently, average time per question is 1.5 minutes. So 1 or 2 minutes for the passage. After that, 1.5 minutes per question. That's how you'll divide RC time. Many people for the short 4-5 line RC passages are able to do this in 1.5 minutes per question with no extra reading time. This how part corresponds with the structure that we've been identifying. That's what we did for passage 1. The why part corresponds with primary purpose, which is what was the first question that you solved. And we're going to spend today and tomorrow mostly on primary purpose. In terms of direct weightage, how many questions am I going to get? Remember, you have around across section 1 and section 2, not more than 15 RC questions usually. Out of 27 total questions, approx 15 will be RC. Of those 15 RC questions, direct weightage can be in the range of 3-4. So if I am facing 5 passages or 6 passages, 3 to 4 of them will have a direct primary purpose question. Every passage does not necessarily have to have a primary purpose question. Yet, mentally, this is the most important thing I have to sort out. So it is conceptually the most important. Whenever we are solving for a question, the language in which the question is presented is important for us. If I don't understand the language, I will misread the question. I can only follow the correct steps to solving the question if I've identified the question type correctly. So synonyms for the word primary can be words like chief, central, main, but synonyms for purpose can range from concern, idea, theme, argument. The word argument on verbal reasoning is not a negative word. It's not people arguing. Argument is somebody's point of view that they're presenting. Concern we've done. Conclusion. Assertion. Point of view. Opinion. Stand. Position. And so on. So there can be a combination. What is the chief concern of the author? What is the central idea? What is the main conclusion or the main theme? These are some common ways of wording the primary purpose question. Over here, it was directly titled primary purpose. Let's see the steps. How would we solve for primary purpose? The first sentence is usually an important point of reference. We'll keep talking about point of reference for RC. That for XYZ question, where do I go and refer in the passage? What's my point of reference? We said RC is not a test of memory. That means for every question, we are verifying our answer from the passage. So what's going to be my point of reference? The first sentence, under normal circumstances, is the most important point of reference for a primary purpose question. Usually, the first sentence will serve like a mini intro as to what's happening on the passage, what's the main topic, like it does over here. It talks about Kazuko Nakane's history, early Japanese immigrants, California's Pajaro Valley. It tells you this is what we're going to talk about. So the first sentence is an important point of reference. Then we follow what is called the first and last parts approach. This can be done in 3 ways. We can look at the first half of the first and last paragraphs. This is something we did for this passage. Some people believe that you should look at the first and last sentences of the first and last paragraphs. While some people believe that you should look at the first and last sentences of all the paragraphs. I find this to be the most useful. As you practice, you can experiment with these three approaches and figure what works for you. Question that you should ask at this point is, if the length of the passage, the average length of the passage is going down, and you don't even have multiple paragraphs a lot of times, then is the first and last parts approach dead? Why do we even need it? What if this passage had finished off with the first para? Okay, no para breaks. Then what do I do with the first and last parts approach? Instead of becoming dead, it is becoming more relevant in that scenario. If this were my passage, I would mentally assign the first and last parts. I'd say, hey, this is my introduction. This is the first part that I'm going to focus on. And perhaps this is my conclusion, and I'm going to focus on this as the last para or the conclusion. I'll look at the first half of this carefully. So the first and last parts approach is becoming more important rather than less important as the structures become undefined. They're giving you undefined structures. You have to find those structures for yourself. So it's not dead. So we've done first and last parts. We've looked at the first sentence. We've identified the structure of the passage. This is what we've arrived at. Now see the options for the primary purpose. Defend something, dismiss something, summarize and critique something, compare, examine differences. Examining differences is the same as comparing. And what did we find in the structure? We found factual and pros and cons. So from a structure perspective, I have an exact match with option C. Exact match with what we've done for the structure. So now I know 99% C is my answer. If I had just 30 seconds to solve this question, I would probably mark C and move on. So please remember, and I keep saying this repeatedly, that you have to let selection and elimination go hand in hand. You have to make friends with discomfort. And you cannot search for perfection on answer choices. This is across the verbal section. I am reiterating it for reading comprehension. Psychologically, these things are important. We are going to talk about now why we selected C and why did we eliminate the others. On moderate or easy questions, I will find points of selection and points of elimination. For the right answer, I'll find the points of selection. For the wrong one, I'll know why I eliminated. But as questions get harder, I would perhaps have to look only for elimination. I might not know why the right one is right, but I'll know why the wrong one is wrong. And sometimes the only thing I know is that option C is correct. I don't know why I don't know why the others are wrong, but I know this one is correct. So sometimes I might just do this using selection and sometimes only elimination. If I'm lucky, I'll get both. Let's take a look at these options now. I'm going to start with option A. Defend a controversial hypothesis. Who's going to tell me what is the meaning of the word hypothesis? Neha, can you tell me what's hypothesis?
Hi, Shweta. Shweta, basically, I feel that I mean, they're just trying to give an explanation, for something which might not be true or correct, but they're just trying to explain us.
Okay, anyone else? What's your take on hypothesis? Anusha?
It's an expected conclusion, but like not a proven conclusion.
Yes, it's not proven. Good. I'm going to add this to RC vocab. It's a theory or assumption or a premise not yet proven. Any kind of research that you do, back in your undergrad, you might have submitted papers. You start off with a hypothesis, then you conduct experiments which will either prove or disprove that hypothesis. If your hypothesis is proven correct with your experiments, with your research, then it becomes a theory that yes, it's going to work all the time. If not, then you'll have to modify your hypothesis and start the process all over again. Is there any theory, proven or unproven, anywhere on this passage? Anybody found a theory? Ayush, did you find a theory?
No.
So if there is no theory, from where are we going to get a controversial theory and why will we be defending it? So A is totally out. Now I'm going to look at option E, examine the differences. Frankly, excuse me. So D and E are out for the same reasons initially for me. My problem is that this passage, if you look at the limitations, it does not provide comparisons. In fact, the author is saying that future research should provide comparisons. So if comparisons are missing, then this is not possible. Compare, examine differences. There is a very strict majority-minority rule when we are solving for primary purpose. The correct answer must refer to the majority of the passage. It cannot refer to any one small part of the passage and get away with it. So if I am looking for comparisons, for example, I have to ask myself, even if one comparison is present, let's say this is a comparison. If one comparison is present here, does that answer to the whole passage? Does that refer to the whole passage? Or is it just one small part? If it is one small part, it cannot be called the primary purpose of the whole passage. By extension, and I'm applying this specially for pros and cons passages because the examiner is smart. The examiner knows that you are going to look at the first parts and the last parts more carefully. The examiner knows that the pros and cons in a pros and cons passage are more likely to be concentrated in the first and last parts of a passage. So, especially for pros and cons passages, do not pick individual merits or demerits as your answers, because the author did not give you individual merits or demerits to do what? As the primary purpose of the whole passage, the author was giving you these individual merits and demerits in order to form the critique, to do the pros and cons. One merit or one demerit is not the purpose of the whole passage. if comparisons were missing, which is what the last part says, that these comparisons were missing, how can something which is missing become the primary purpose? So using this rule, I will eliminate D and E. I will also eliminate B, dismiss. So you might feel B, by the way, is the most common error. I'm a little surprised that some of you picked D because people get tempted when they look at this. It is, however, too particularistic. So they feel that this matches with the idea of dismissing it as narrow. It's too particular. But that is one demerit. That can't be the purpose of the whole passage. However, there is something more interesting to be learned when it comes to option E. If I remove this examine the differences, if I let it go, and I just look at Japanese and Chinese. So one fear you can have is, I haven't read this passage in detail. What if I'm missing out on something? I know most of this passage talks about Japanese, but what if I have missed reading up properly on how much it talks about Chinese immigrants? So you might second guess yourself. In order to satisfy such a situation, what we do is we look at, in fact, we approach RC with 3 pillars in our mind. RC is taken care of using 3 major pillars. The first one is called word matching. The second is called location, and the third is called vertical scanning. I'm going to talk about vertical scanning right now. These 3 will save your life. Whenever in doubt, or as default anyway, we should be using these 3. We should not be using subjective thinking, subjective understanding. What is vertical scanning? I have only read this passage for structure. I have not read it for factual information. But then factual information gets tested on the options. For example, I am reading E and it talks of Japanese and Chinese. Now I don't know what the passage was saying with respect to Chinese. So I'm going to use vertical scanning to locate wherever Chinese immigrants are talked about and verify option E. So how does vertical scanning work? One way of doing vertical scanning is to look at the center of the line as a midpoint. Make this the point of focus and vertically scan downward. By the virtue of having 2 eyes, you will look both left and right of the point of focus. And it takes approximately 3 seconds if you're wide awake. Okay, you've had enough coffee. So it takes about 3 seconds to cover an entire para, giving you a view of all the words, and then you pick up the word, focus on the word that you were looking for. So it's a process of hunting for those words. We do this to verify options. We look at language on the options. Now I want to see where is the point of reference. So you start hunting for those words on the para. Another way of doing vertical scanning is to make a figure of 8. First as 1/2, like this. And then as another half, the opposite side. So if I show this to you using a pencil, it would be something like this. In fact, a lot of words will get covered twice over. So this might take you 4 seconds instead of 3 seconds because you're following a 2-step approach. Either way, you have to quickly scan through all the words in a given paragraph. You're not reading, you're hunting. Why does vertical scanning work, or what's the logic behind all of this? There's something called I span. I span is the number of words that you can take in at one go. Most of us have an I span of 4-5 words, about this much. The entire newspaper industry is based on the concept of I span. Anybody in your family who's read the same paper for years together, could be your parents, grandparents. If you change their newspaper for a particular day, let's say the newspaper vendor comes up with a different paper on a particular day, you'll find that they're irritated all day. Why? Because after years of reading the same paper, their eye span has become the size of this column now. They're probably reading so much at one go. That's why if you sit with them over morning tea and you decide, okay, today I'm going to read the paper with my grandfather, you'd find that he's done with page 1 while you are still on article 1. Why? Because he's reading vertically and his eye span has become the size of the newspaper column. The newspaper industry plays with this. So every newspaper has a mildly different column size to irritate you if you're changing your newspaper. So you become resistant to change. People who have phenomenal reading speeds, their eye span can be the size of an entire page. That's why they're able to read thousands of words per minute. We don't need any of this. We don't even need to alter our current eye span. All we need to do is focus on the middle of the line and just go downward like this vertically. So take a few seconds and tell me, how many times on this passage do you see the word Chinese? Try this out. How many times did you say Chinese? Only once? Over here? Something that appears only once cannot become the primary purpose of the whole passage, majority-minority rule. Okay? So A was out because there's no hypothesis. E is out because this is not the majority of the passage. B is out because it's one demerit. Demerits in themselves will not become the primary purpose. Comparisons are missing. How can something that's missing become the primary purpose? I hope this is clear to those who picked up D as the answer. Neha?
Yes, Shweta, it's 100% clear now.
Akshay? Anurag?
Yes, ma'am. This is clear now.
Okay. Now, why is it that C is correct after summarize and critique? What about this? This takes me to the second pillar of reading comprehension that we are to talk about, which is word matching. For an answer to be correct, and whenever you're stuck between two close answer choices, you have to make sure that the one with the greater word match with the point of reference. Location is your point of reference. So what is your location or point of reference on primary purpose? It is the first sentence, or when you look at first and last parts, it's first sentence and the conclusion, if there is a defined conclusion. These are your points of references. There has to be a word match. Word match implies either the words have to be the same or similar or synonymous. The greater the word match, the more that answer is correct. And this applies to all types of questions, not just primary purpose. Whenever you're stuck between two close answer choices, the one with the greater word match is the correct answer. This was our point of reference. So look at this. You have Kazuko Nakane's history, you have history over here. Early Japanese immigrants, and you have early Japanese settlement here. Central California's Pajaro Valley, and we have California. So there's a very high word match with the first sentence, which is usually our point of reference for the primary purpose question. That's why C we know. Now, both from a structure point of view and a word match with the intro point of view is 100% the correct answer. I have no doubt about it now. If this question is sorted for all of you, I'd like you to try another primary purpose question from passage 2. Please open passage 2. Follow the same process that we have followed for passage 1 and answer the first question. Say primarily interested in. Interest can also be a synonym for primary purpose. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Try this out. Okay, let's see your answers. Many of you have gone with D. That's interesting. Others? Look at the first para. Namya, first paragraph. What is the kind of passage are you looking at? Positive, negative, factual?
So the first passage is factual.
During the past 15 years, they've contributed significantly. Isn't that positive? Begun to uncover a past long ignored. Make important contributions. Are these not all positive things? Once I have found positive, now the rest of the passage for me is simply a hunt for negative. If I find negative, it becomes pros and cons. If I don't find negative, then it becomes appreciation. So I'm going to skim through para 2, searching for negative. But what do I find instead? He shows convincingly. Effectively analyzes. Para 3, bridges a critical gap. Well researched and engaging. Skillfully portrays. So what do we find? Para 1, 2, and 3 were all positive. There was nothing negative there. Now let's see paragraph 4. Para 4 tells you while advancing our understanding, the books do not raise the question. Neither study offers useful comparisons. What is all this? These are limitations. So para 4 is limitations, is giving you the limitations, it's negative. So what's the structure now, Namya?
So it's positive, positive, negative. So it's a pros and cons passage.
Yes, it becomes pros and cons. And
I
so,
got
yes, please tell me.
I'm so sorry. I think I got a little confused with because it talks about like early 20th century. I know I shouldn't, but it's just felt like there's so many factual points to it. I was a little confused between whether it's pros and cons and whether it's factual. So in my head, I was like, the author is factually trying to present or like talk about whether something is good or not, but it's heavily factual with a little bit of like his um, appreciation or critique coming across.
There will always be facts. Even in a heavily opinionated passage, they have to base their opinion on facts. So we can't run away from facts. If it were a scientific passage using experiments, etc., there'd again be elements of facts. But what do we do with those facts? How do we structure them? Are we introducing pros and cons? Are we using positive, negative? Are we giving examples? Are we giving counter examples? What are we doing with the factual base?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
It's definitely not criticize because criticize is not the same as critique. Criticize would be completely negative. We are not comparing. Describe and explain belong to neutral passages, factual passages. This. We've established this as a pros and cons passage. That is why looking simply at the first words in the options, you should have gone with B, evaluating. You didn't need to read beyond this to pick B. Just the first words were enough to give you the answer. Sanjay, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Arjun?
Yes, though I looked at recent studies and then I felt maybe that sort of deviates from what the passage is talking about. So, though I came at evaluating, I don't know, recent studies sort of drove me away from that option.
They are evaluating the recent studies. Recent doesn't imply that they're comparing recent with other types of studies. Because even if they would, if that's the intent, we can't find comparisons anywhere. In fact, the last part of the passage, like the previous passage also, it says now while advancing our understanding, they don't provide a general understanding. They don't provide useful comparisons. That's a flaw.
Right.
Ma'am, the thing that like I was confused between B and D as well. This entire passage while I was going through it talked a lot about the American history or like the Chicano history. So from a point of like a word match, I felt, I mean, both recent studies of urban history was also there, and since there was some development of Chicano history as well. I agree, like the evaluating versus describing word can help to eliminate, but I think that threw me off.
That's a good point, Anurag. I'm going to come to that next. If we did not have the first words, what would we do? But let's sort out on the basis of the first words first, because they actually made it easy for you. This question became an easy question because the first words were very obvious in where they were going. But that may not always happen. Ninad, is it
All
making
right.
sense?
Yeah. Though, just another follow-up here, like as you made us go through the passage 1 and 2, the first one you are branding this as a factual, and the second one you are branding this as like pros and cons. So are these like some common archetypes that we should look out for?
Yes, 100%. These are common passage types, although they're not, I'll say it's very difficult to say that you won't get more types of passages, but there are 4 to 6 which are very common, or their combinations are common.
Got it. Okay.
Aditi, Anurag, Ninad, Ojas, any doubts so far?
No.
No, mom.
Okay. So what would have happened if we didn't have these words to help us? If they were all similar, how would I now pick the answer? Academic historiography has been mentioned. We have historiography somewhere. But is it the whole passage? Majority, minority? Then look at southwestern cities. I think that's there only in the last para as one of the flaws, that they don't have comparisons. So again, we can get rid of E using the majority, minority. Option C, different historical methodologies. Do you see the word methodology anywhere? First para, last para, please scan and tell me. Has the word method or methodology been used anywhere on this passage? Yes, no. You could not find methodology?
I couldn't do it.
For some reason, our Indian South Asian brains, they love the words method, methodology to refer to anything in general. Be wary. unless a passage is specifically about a method. I'm not saying that methodology cannot be there on primary purpose answer choices. But unless it is specifically about a method of data collection, method of research, don't pick them up as answer choices. You have to be wary of these in general across RC, but for some reason it gets most tested on primary purpose. We are happy mentally to classify everything as a methodology, even if the word has not been used. Now we come down to B and D. The development of Chicano history. Where is the development that they've talked about? 1900 to 1930. Okay, and a similar time period for the second book. So all those who went with D, are we talking about the development of entire Chicano history or a fixed time period? Do you know what happened before 1900? Also, are we not talking about two particular regions? They've picked up El Paso and LA. Is that all of Chicano history? We have to be wary of this temptation of going from specific to general. And that is true all over reading comprehension. You have to be wary of unsupported generalizations. And in other words, do not go from specific to general. It's very tempting to pick this up. I'm giving you a broad answer. I'm talking about the development of entire Chicano history. Now it's your problem. Go and pick up whatever you like from all of this. But the safer such answers feel that I have picked up everything possible, the more wrong they are. Because a passage cannot talk about everything. It has to talk about something in specific. Recent studies of urban history, recent matches with over here, studies here, for example. Urban histories are here. And of course, you're talking about urbanization across both the books. And you know that you're talking about history. Am I happy with B? Not 100%. I would have been happier with B if it had included the most important word Chicano. What's missing from B? The word Chicano, which makes you bend towards D. But you never seek perfection. We'd established this earlier on. Do not search for perfection. B is the correct answer. Evaluating matches pros and cons. Recent studies of urban history gives me a word match with the first part of the passage. Very good. Everything is great. Chicano is missing. B is not perfect. It is 80% correct. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to dump an answer which is 80% correct in favor of something which is minus. Just because B was 80% correct and not 100% correct. If I compare it with modern dating and relationships, imagine you coming to me and saying, I've got a new girlfriend or boyfriend. And I ask you why, what happened? Why did you break up with the previous person? And you're like, that person was an 8 on 10, was not 10 on 10. And I say, okay, introduce me to the new person. And I find the new person is a minus. So what did we do? Suppose a girl comes and tells me this, I've got a new boyfriend. So I tell her, look, the one you were with was 8 on 10. And because he was not 10 on 10, you went for a total jerk. Okay, don't do that. Don't dump the correct answer in favor of something which is wrong. You know it's wrong, but you're still picking it because you're not happy with this. Don't do that to RC. Don't search for perfection. Don't do that in real life also. But of course, real life, we'll say don't sell yourself short. So if you deserve a 10, don't settle for 8. And for heaven's sake, no -2. And that is how I end up with a lot of relationship related discussions. And I end up attending all your weddings. And I'm now meeting the second generation. So people who went to B school 20 years ago, their kids are now 12, 13 years old. That is the reward, and I'm very happy. But yeah, I hope this is clear now. A lot of you picked up D as the answer. Sanjay?
One question here.
Yes, ma'am, it's clear now.
Yes, Anurag.
As you said, that Chicano history doesn't refers to all of the places
Development of Chicano history. Because we are
right,
not talking about development of the entire Chicano history. We're only,
right.
this is 1900 to 1930, this is 1900 to 1920.
Okay.
Plus, they're talking about social labor urban history. Chicano history can be more than this. Plus, they're talking about these two places, LA and El Paso. Chicano history can be more than these two places, right?
One more question. You mentioned the approach to like this first and last paras, right? So to identify the structure at the first read of this, one thing that you mentioned about the first and last paras of the the first half of the first and last paras, right? But like as you were going through this to identify the structure, you ended up going through each of these paras as well. So then is it required that we like
I am not saying that don't go over the other paras. I'm saying we skim through the other paras, hunting for structural keywords. So I would have read this in detail up to here. I might have read the whole para in detail. But when I'm reading para 2 and para 3, I'm hunting. Do I have positive? Do I have negative? Do I have examples? What kind of structural keywords am I looking for? I'm looking for similarity indicators, not only but also kind of words. I'm looking for contrast indicators. However, although degree of intensity, time, frequency, common, uncommon, rare, occasional. Then I'm looking for examples. No examiner is ever going to spare examples. Wherever there's an example, there'll be a question. Then we're looking for strong words like only, solely, no other, exclusively. Wherever there's only or any of these synonyms, you're 100% getting a question. So what am I reading the passage for changes? I'm not reading to understand that this happened from 1900 to 1930. It happened in LA. And then there were these new immigrant barriers. There was occupational mobility. They were excluded from occupational mobility. Record number of immigrants came. I am not trying to understand these facts. I'm trying to say, okay, you have a bracket here. By the way, punctuation marks are important. So punctuation marks are going to get tested. Within punctuation marks, brackets are very important. Whatever is inside brackets is 100% getting tested. So I say one bracket here, I probably get a question. I see something positive over here, shows convincingly. I see positive, effectively analyzes, bridges a critical gap. That is what I'm reading for. That is what I am registering with myself. Same goes for para 2. Para 3, I'm not trying to memorize whether it's about Southwestern communities or proximity with border and all of that. All I want to know is that they don't raise the question. Neither studies does this. So it's negative. That's all I'm reading for.
Got it. Sure.
So we've done quite a bit on primary purpose. I just want to flesh this out. When I say don't go from specific to general, let's take up this example. I think this is the first example that school teachers pick up in grade 9 or 10 when they're introducing Venn diagrams to you. If you say that A and B, or can you say that B and C should give you A? If you make a Venn diagram, that Kabir is a man and Kabir is also mortal. So Kabir belongs to two sets. Does that mean that all men necessarily are mortal? We don't know unless we know the sizes of those sets. But we can't make that conclusion because this goes from specific to general. And logically, when you make a Venn diagram, you'll call this wrong. On the other hand, if you know that all men are mortal and Kabir is one such man, then you'll say, yes, Kabir is mortal. What applies to all men will apply to one man, Kabir. And that is what you're supposed to go with on paper. On paper, this is correct. Common sensically, this is correct. No, you go attend a funeral and you come back saying, oh, we're all mortal. We all have to die one day. You attended one funeral, you saw one person dying, and you made a conclusion about everyone. Because that's how real life operates, be it natural science or social science. What is the logic of experimentation? Even if you think, oh, I'm a natural scientist, I'm very objective. Even if you're talking about the law of gravity, can you experiment on every iota of the earth? Is it possible for you to do all? It's not possible. So, no matter how much you're able to do, you are still extrapolating from specific to general. What applies to this sample set will apply to all, is your assumption. It's not possible in real life to put everything inside a Venn diagram. That's possible on paper. Because real life is specific to general, these options feel very tempting to us. Also, it's very tempting to dump the problem on the examiner. I have picked up everything, now you do what you want. So options which feel unnecessarily, unnaturally safe because they cover everything are usually wrong. The more specific you are to the problem, the more correct you generally are. That is why you have to be extremely wary of going from specific to general. You have to be wary of generalizations. They will usually be incorrect because usually a passage cannot talk about the whole world. It has to be solving a particular, a specific problem. That's why I would
Now,
pick P over D. Okay.
in that question B, how was this specific to general? Sorry, I didn't get that.
Option D is general, no? Specific to general, we're going. From specific examples of Chicano history, we are talking about the
Acha,
development
okay.
of Chicano history.
Got it. Okay.
All right. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of homework. As far as RC is concerned, I'll not overload you today. But you have to keep working on vocab. That doesn't change. So vocab list, I expect you to get started with the first half at least this week. So your focus should be getting done with list 1 to 7 this week. If you haven't done that already, those who joined later. For RC, passage 3 and 4. You will make the structures and solve for primary purpose. So passages 3 and 4 are slightly different from passages 1 and 2. Nobody asked me, how do I decide how much of a structure to make, how much to invest in making a structure? Our rule is the more convoluted a passage, alien a passage, I don't understand the subject at all, or the more a passage has comparisons, theories, experiments. In these circumstances, the passage will need a detailed written structure. This defines the need. Do I need a structure? Do I need to make it detailed? How much do I write? Please remember, we're still not writing down facts. We're not trying to write down stuff that we can go back and verify. We're still writing structure only. We're not rewriting the passage. So, average should be a few words per para, maximum. 3 to 5 words per para. So even if you're making a flowchart out of the passage, you can't write more than 4-5 words per paragraph. You're not rewriting the passage. So you will find that passages 3 and 4 probably need more detailed structures than what we've done so far. And passage 3 has a direct primary purpose question. Passage 4 does not have it. So you will write it down anyway. Like, this is the structure and this is what I think is the primary purpose. Because only once you mentally sort out the primary purpose are you equipped to look at other types of questions. So try this out for today. I'm going to see you again tomorrow morning. Do you have any questions for me?
Shweta, I had a question.
Tell me.
In the first passage,
Yeah.
like the passage started with Kazuko Nakane's history of Japanese immigrants. So my initial reaction was that, oh, this is not factual, but it is rather a recollection of this historian's recollection, essentially. How do I think that this is actually factual when
Even if it's a summary, it's a fact. If you are summarizing a book, then you are going factual only, no? What all the book covers, what has the historian done. Only when you start saying this is good or bad, do you start moving beyond facts. Whether you're defining something, you are explaining it, describing it, summarizing it, stating a sequence of events, all of these are factual activities.
Okay.
So when you give me the sequence of events in a war, there's a war that happened, and over 1 year, these are the events that happened. That's factual. But when you say it is very sad, okay, that so many people got killed, and the government should have done this, should not have done this, the world should have done this, should not have done this, then you're moving beyond the facts.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. I'm Ojas.
Yes, Ojas.
Yeah. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, is there any particular way how you need to recall the vocabulary words?
When you're learning vocab, right now you might need even up to 1 hour a day to learn the words. Initial couple of weeks, you'll have to work hard on learning the vocabulary. So there's no shortcut to it, you have to cram it. We've tried to make your life easier by grouping the words as per similar words in the way that GRE tests them. So you have to learn them as per their groups and attribute only one broad meaning, which is like their group name. You don't have to get into detailed, nuanced meanings. So please don't start searching for the detailed word meanings and making notes on each word. Don't do that. Unless there is a word that you get badly stuck and you're just not able to remember it, then it's okay to make that effort on that one word, but not on every word. The best
And
way to build recall around the words is whatever I have learned. Let's say I have learned two groups right now.
okay,
After half an hour, I'm going to come back and try to write down whatever I remember. A gap of 30-40 minutes, whatever I try to memorize, if I sit and write it down, even if I recall only 50%, whatever I recall in writing after a gap of 30 to 40 minutes gets pushed into my long-term memory.
okay.
Those of you who have a commute time to office, you should leverage your commute time to do vocab. So for the next couple of months, please Uber to work so that you can use that time to focus on vocabulary. Get into study buddies within the community, within the group, so that you can quiz each other on vocab. So you should have this Sunday activity that who's my friend from class and let's quiz each other on the words that we've learned this week.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, one last doubt.
Yeah.
This is the only this is the only way how I could verify that I recall all the two groups if I've studied two groups, right? Write down on a single piece of paper after 30 minutes whatever you recall, and let's assume that if it is 50%, then you recall 50%, right? Or no?
See, it's possible that when you see the other words, the words that you were not able to recall in writing, but when you see them on a question, you're still able to recall them. So I'm not saying that this is proof of recall. I'm saying this is proof of pushing from short term to long term.
And what is the proof of recall then?
Proof of recall will be when you see the words on a question, are you able to associate the words together from the same group?
Oh,
That is why when you quiz each other or when a family member or friend quizzes you, the quiz has to happen as per the groups.
okay. So it needs to be in order, it needs to be random after 2 to 3 days.
It has to be as per the groups. So
Okay.
I have to ask myself, okay, group of prediction, what were the words? Or the word, let's say forecast belongs to the group of prediction. What are the other words related to forecast in that same group?
Okay.
All my recall has to be around the groups.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, Shantanu?
About the primary purpose, I had this query like, does every first word of the option, like in first para, there was defend, dismiss, summarize, compare, and examine, will always the options will be like this, that the first word will be representing the
The
structure or
easier the
intent.
question, the more representative the first words will be. It's not
Okay.
necessary. And the harder the questions, the more ambiguous they get. That's why we've been doing this discussion on if the first words were not there to help us, how would we still solve the
Okay.
question?
Okay. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Anything else, anyone?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask you, so regarding the structure, we look at each of the paragraphs and we give it like a substructure, or we sort of analyze what that specific paragraph does, and then we look at the entire passage through those sub paragraphs. Is that how we do it?
Yes, but you're good. In reality, you're going to get only one passage which has 3-4 paras. You're
Hmm.
more likely to get passages which just have 4-5 lines or 10 lines, maybe no para break, maximum 2 paragraphs.
Hmm.
So ultimately, it's not about the paragraphs. It's about the structural keywords. And as you solve questions, you'll realize that each question, be it factual, inference, any kind of question, whatever the point of reference, whichever paragraph, whichever line, they are going to pick on some structural development in that area to create the question. The question is not about what did Nakane say, but the question will be about one structural keyword. Like we identified all those categories of structural keywords. So they will pick up a keyword from one of those categories to create the question, irrespective of the type of question. That is why when we are reading a passage, be it a 5-line passage or a 50-line passage, we are reading where are my structural indicators, because that's where I'm going to get questions from.
All right.
So it doesn't matter after you've done 50 passages from today, it doesn't matter whether it's a history passage, a political science, economics, biotech, it doesn't matter. Because irrespective of the content, I'm reading for structural keywords, I'm getting tested on structural keywords. That's it. So I have to become immune to my liking, not liking, understanding, not understanding the passage.
Okay, got it.
And that is why I'll insist that the passages that we are discussing in class, at least for those passages, you show me a written structure. So from tomorrow, you will, whatever structure you're writing in your notebooks, you'll take a picture, put it on the WhatsApp group so that I can see what your thought process was. And one feedback you will give to yourself is how much of this structure that I noted down did I actually use to solve questions? Did I use it for my primary purpose question? Did I use it for structure-based questions? What worked, what did not work? That will fine tune what are you reading for. I want, by the time you've solved the next 30 to 50 passages, your brain to work like the examiner's brain. Where can I make questions? If that's what you start reading for, then you're already ready to answer any question they throw at you. Okay. Chalo, I'll see you tomorrow then. Have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks,
Thanks,
bye.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.